All right, looks like we're live. How are all my good-looking, happy, sexy people out in YouTube and ain't YouTube and Mugbook land doing this morning? We are officially in Lovecraft country today, man. It is dark, dreary, overcast, and it doesn't look as if it's gonna rain. It just looks like we are saturated in the muck of Beijing's famous industrial pollution. So, as Frank Monday would say, it's like walking around in shit soup, sucking on a turd. Not cute at all, man. Dirty, dirty. So better to stay indoors today with your air purifier running at full power and avoid the outdoors as much as possible. I remember back in the day when I first moved over here, the pollution levels on the AQI, they would measure it at the US Embassy and then release the data on an app. Like they had a US Embassy app, and so they would measure it all over the city and then release that data. And it was so embarrassing to the local municipal government or whatever that they ultimately banned the US from collecting air data. I mean, they can do it just for the embassy, and they can only now like display it on the embassy website. But the Chinese government put a ban on reporting anything above 500. So 50 and below is safe. Anything above 50 becomes dangerous. Around 200, and you shouldn't even go outdoors, they say, or even open your windows. You should just stay home and run an air filter. And then 300 is like deadly. And then 500 is like, I don't know what they call it, super hazardous, deadly. So today looks like it's probably at around 550, maybe 600. But anyway, point of the story is, for quite a few years, especially in the wintertime, sometimes in the summertime too, but the AQI would get up to like 1200, 1800, 2300, 3600, and basically what it's saying is that if you go outside, you're gonna die. And I had to go out a few times during that shit, like headed to work. I remember this one particularly nasty day. It was like 2,900 on the AQI. Like I said, they won't report above 500 now. It'll just say 500 plus. But it was 2,900 on the AQI app, and you can now you can just buy the AQI machine and set it there, and it'll measure it all the way up to 5,000 or whatever it can get up to. But it was literally, you could feel the pollution coating your skin as you walked through it, and it was just clouds of ionizing radiation. And here the traffic's doing funny shit. Clouds of ionizing radiation. You could smell it, you could taste it. So visceral, so nasty. And it was like right after that, like people constantly just post on social media about it, be like, oh my God, we're dying. And I talked to I had a student who was actually like one of the head doctors at China's Center for Disease Control. And I told him one time, I said, man, if it keeps up like this, we'll all be dead in 10 years. And he repeated that on social media. Like he just said, like he said it as if they were his own words. And he said, yeah, he said, you know what? He said, when I first became a doctor here, here in the city, Beijing, the amount of cancer patients, like he became a doctor here like 20 years ago, about the same time I moved here. He said the amount of cancer patients, you could count them on your hand per week that would come in and be admitted at the hospital or whatever and get processed and die from various kinds of cancer. He said you could count them on your, you know, there'd be a dozen, maybe less than a dozen per week. He said in the 2 decades that he had been working there, or decade plus, that number went up to like 1,000 per day or something. A crazy amount. He said now, he said the amount of folks getting and dying cancer is innumerable. It was his opinion that if you grew up here, that 50% of the people here in this country would die of cancer, would be the cause of death. So pretty scary shit, you know. You gotta count your blessings, be grateful to be alive, and keep on keeping on. So it was pretty gnarly, and today's one of those gnarly days. But honestly, it got better. When the what was that? APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Conference, they started using a new technology, these silver nitrate missiles, and they reported on them in the newspaper, and they had vehicles that looked like tanks with like surface-to-air missile batteries strapped to the back of them, and they had them outside the city in the hills, because the wind stream, the jet stream, blows from west to east, and so they had those missile batteries out, and there's mountains and hills all around the west, north, and east, northeast side of the city. So they had them out in the west section of the city. That area is called Fragrant Mountain, Xiangshan, and then a little bit north of that is an area called 13 Tombs, 13 Ming Dynasty tombs, Shisanling. And they had those out there, and they were blasting the atmosphere with a chemical concoction that reduced the pollution level. And during that APEC, Asia Pacific Economic Conference, the sky turned a beautiful azure blue, and the air was so clean. Was it really? But it felt clean, and it looked clean, and it was pure, and like when the wind blew, you could feel a refreshing breath of air, you know? And I thought, wow, that's fascinating technology. So now they got the science worked out where just like a light switch, they can just turn it on and off. Not exactly sure what's going on or how they do it, but today is Lovecraft country. We are mired in the muck of the gnarly. So I'm gonna use I wrote a whole comic series called Swirly, the Taoist sage who swirls about, and he has a sword of wisdom and power that he would use to disperse clouds of pollution, and he would summon giant UFOs that create vortexes of purifying energy that would blow the pollution away from the city. And so I would draw a lot of that, and he hung around in a flying pagoda that was like a Chinese Siheyar complex that would fly. Maybe I'll take some video of some of those old comic strips I drew back in the day when it got gnarly like this, because they were cute, they were fun. Swirly, the Taoist sage who swirls about, he'd get out there and fight all the pollution. I love y'all good looking happy people. I'm gonna cut it short here. It looks like there might be someone out in Happy Land. If that's Sandra Sue, how are you? Good morning, hugs and kisses. As above, so below. Until I see you in the future, bye for now. 再见.